I'm going to read a few verses from Micah, chapter 6 and verses 6 to 8. With what shall I come before the Lord and bow down before the exalted God? Shall I come before him with burnt offerings, with calves a year old? Actually, I'm quite grateful we don't have to do that anymore, aren't you? Will the Lord be pleased with thousands of rams, with 10,000 rivers of olive oil? Shall I offer my firstborn for my transgression, the fruit of my body for the sin of my soul? And then comes the reply. He has shown you, O man, what is good. And what does the Lord require of you? To act justly, to love mercy, and to walk humbly with your God. To act justly, to love mercy, and to walk humbly with your God. That's our mandate, if you like, when we want to come before the Lord. That's our offering, to love mercy. That's the line I want to just spend a little bit of time on, just a couple of minutes. That word mercy, that's translated mercy here. Sometimes we see it translated loving kindness, goodness, sometimes a mix of those words, loving faithfulness, loyal mercy, loyal loving. It's that kind of mix of words. Grace. It's translated grace as well. And that's because it's a word in Hebrew that is hesed, and there is no literal translation for that word. And so it is translated in all these different ways. Sometimes it's mercy, sometimes it's loving kindness, sometimes it's grace. We saw it in the psalm, and we see it now in this reading from Micah. No straight translation. And when Jesus was on earth, and we read his work in the New Testament, although by then it's all we translate it from the Greek, not the Hebrew. He didn't try to translate Hesed either. He lived it, and he told stories that demonstrated it. And we could say that Hesed is a defining characteristic of God. And if we go back to those words, grace, mercy, loving kindness, faithfulness, they are defining characteristics of God, aren't they? And we believe, we sang Faithful God, we believe that God will act in accordance with those things because they are defining characteristics of his. So he will have to always act out of those places. And then we find it odd when bad things seem to happen, don't we? If we look back at the Jewish understanding of that word, hesed, it was a very simple formula. We talked about formula yesterday, didn't we, really? And actually it's the same formula. If I obey, I am blessed. If I don't obey, I will be punished. That was the Old Testament way of seeing things. Obedience equals blessings, disobedience equals punishment. And God has to, because it's part of his covenants. And I think lots of us still live by those understandings. But actually we come to discover that it's not quite that simple, is it? If we look at somebody like Job, he was a good man, wasn't he? He obeyed, And yet, we know the terrible things that happened to him. He lived a righteous life. He was pushed to the limit. He obeyed, but was he blessed? So what's happening to the formula? Well, the formula is beginning to wobble a bit, isn't it, by the time we get halfway through the Old Testament? And it's almost like God is encouraging his people to grow up in the same way that we encourage our children to grow up. You know, when they're 5, if you tidy your bedroom, I'll give you a Mars bar or something. But when they're 16 and 17, we don't quite use the same formula, do we? If you tidy your bedroom, I'll give you a Mars bar. It doesn't work when they're 16 and 17, does it? So we use encouragements in other ways. And so God does with us. And the revelation that was beginning to come through was that no matter how unfaithful his people were, God was always faithful to them. Always. He kept his promises even when his people broke them. So what is Hesed? What is this word that's grace and loving kindness and mercy? Well, there's 3 things in the New Testament that I think part of Jesus' teaching that really give us a good example of what Hesed is. The Good Samaritan. I'm not going to go into the story, I'm sure you know it well. The Good Samaritan was somebody who showed mercy, loving kindness, grace to someone who actually was his enemy. The man that was beaten up had no right to expect anything from the Good Samaritan. But what did he get? Care, love, attention, kindness, mercy, grace. Think about the prodigal son. The father anxiously standing at the I kind of imagine it as the top of the road looking for the son. Is he coming back? Is he coming back? And when he comes back, the son gets given the cloak, the ring, the fatted calf, the feasting, the celebration. Was that what he deserved? No. But it's what he got, wasn't it? Think about the parable that Jesus told of the farmer who went out and kept bringing people in from the market to do the labour. Do you remember that? And then at the end of the day, outrageous, wasn't it? Outrageous. The people who had only done 1 hour's work got the same pay as the people who had laboured all day long. I remember arguing in Sunday school. It's not fair. It isn't fair. But it is mercy. It is grace. And the consistent theme, the one from whom we have no right to expect anything, gives us everything. That's Hesed. That's grace. So when Jesus went to the house of the centurion yesterday, we talked about his worthiness and his favour. Jesus was showing grace. Not because the man deserved it. In fact, in a sense, he did deserve it. But that wasn't why he got it, was it? He got it because of grace. So in verse 8, he's shown you, O man, what is good. What does the Lord require of you? To act justly. That's our behaviour. To show that kind of Hesed ourselves as far as we can. To love mercy. That's our attitude, isn't it? To show mercy and grace as far as we can. And to walk humbly with our God. That's our commitment. Why? Because God has shown it to us first. And we'll see that again as we share communion in a moment or two. If there was ever An illustration of Hesed, the bread and the wine has to be it, doesn't it? We who deserve nothing get everything. Heirs to the kingdom through the blood of Jesus.